You be you. Everybody, welcome. I got an awesome episode of Marketeers Clubhouse today. I'm your host, Jamie Calon. Welcome. Today I've got an acquaintance of mine that I've known for quite a long time, and we've run in a really weird path separately, but yet together. Rob Roskopp is here today. Rob, welcome.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. For everyone who doesn't know, but most everyone does, Rob is the founder or co-founder of Santa Cruz Bicycles. Santa Cruz Bicycles is the gold standard and has been for, well, since Rob started his company, God, 30 years ago. Rob, how long ago was it?
Yeah, it's been 94 was the first bike we sold. Yeah, early 94.
Simple math, about 30 years. So congratulations. It's unbelievable.
A long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. There's so much that goes on, and I'm obviously super passionate about cycling, mountain bikes, and honestly Santa Cruz because of my tangential relationship with that brand. But I really wanted to sit down and chat with you. You've got a really interesting career path that brought you to sort of where you are today as a really established businessman. But I wanted to just chat about your life. Obviously that's going to include all sorts of touch points along the cycling world as we go. But for the people that don't know the Rob story, do you want to just sort of back us up to young Rob? Because this is my favorite part of the story, is where we start with young Rob, and just sort of give us like a 20,000 foot how you got to where you got to.
Sure. Yeah, can do that. Born just outside Detroit, Michigan, in Mount Clemens. Grew up playing hockey from 4 years of age. Played till I think I was 14. Around when I was 12, we moved to Cincinnati, and the level of hockey, it was like going from pros to amateurs, to say the least. The level wasn't anywhere near what I was used to. We were national champions multiple times. Just to give you an idea, Johnny Van Briesbrock was our goal. I played with Johnny for 6 years on Little Caesars. Michael Illich, the founder of Little Caesars Pizza, and his family Michael's passed on now, but incredible person, excuse me, and family. A lot of support. But so team sports were a big part, and that from an early age. So that teaches you a lot of things that I think continue throughout your life and help you in your adult life. Once we moved to Cincinnati, I played only a couple of years, and it got to the point where it wasn't as fun. And at that time, I picked up skateboarding, and so I was really into that and focused on that from then on. At that same time, I was racing motocross, BMX. So I was in a multitude of sports, and I kind of did that. And then skateboarding was huge in the 70s. By end of 1980, it started dying out. All the parks started closing. And I was finishing up high school, and I knew I wanted to get the hell out of Ohio and go to California, because I'd always wanted to come out to California, especially at that time. It's not what it once was as far as back then, like it was back then. Unfortunately, it's changed so much today that it's still a really great place. The climate's good, and there's a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of bad things now, unfortunately. But anyways, that's a whole nother segment. So saved up like $600, got a Greyhound bus ticket, and moved out. We had I had communicated with a lot of the skaters out in California, the little skate zines we did, and write letters back and forth. There's no internet, so that's how we communicated, because phone calls back then were, really expensive, especially when you don't have that much money. So they offered a place to stay when I came out here, and the whole thing really took off from within 3 months of coming out to California. I got a place to stay, a job, but got sponsored by independent Fausto Vitella. He's passed on now, unfortunately, too. That was one of the co-founders of Thrasher.
Mm.
He really helped me out and introduced me to Rich Novak, who later in life became my business partner, and he was originally my sponsor for skating. So got here in December of '82, and by I think it was the first street style contest was March or April of '83. Turned pro there. I think I got like 6th or 7th in that. But then 2 months later was Joe's Ramp Jam, and that was my first vertical half pipe competition, and I took 3rd there. And then then we about summer of '84 we came out with the first pro model, and really at that time skating was really dead, so we were creating our own scene, and through these magazines. And then you had Thrasher, and then TWS came out, Trans World Skateboarding, but it was really, skating was so small at that point. And then it started picking up, and then Back to the Future came out, and that was kind of that gave it a big push.
Right.
Besides the other things that we were doing with the magazine, we did the Midwest Melee in Nebraska in '84, I think it was. Yeah, it was '84 too. And that was just taking out, there was Fausta drove 8 of us or whatever out to Nebraska, and this guy, Rich Hausman's backyard, or I think it was Rich's backyard, he had the half pipe. And it was in this neighborhood, and just he invited all his friends and everything, and we made our own content. And this is '84, so it was pretty incredible time, an incredible ride. So it was a great way to travel the world, learn a lot of the business side, because Rich became really my mentor.
You left out, because I think a lot of people aren't gonna put this together really clearly. It was Santa Cruz Skateboards that was your sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Santa Cruz Skateboards, independent trucks. I
Yeah.
changed from Indy to Going, and then back to Indy at one point, and this other upstart Impulse that did that for a short period that didn't take off, unfortunately. But yeah, I always came back to Indy.
Yeah. Well, it's the truck of choice. There's no doubt. I can't imagine skating in anything else. I've had a bunch of different people in. I'm in that snowboard world where, so I was in the mix with sort of the very first, the Achenbachs in Calgary started the first snowboard store. And there was a really thriving skateboard scene in Calgary where I was growing up. You were an icon through that period, and skateboarding, like with all the dried up pools and all the different stuff that was happening, California was just the spot. And it was so, the drive to go down there was magnetic. Like the second I was good enough on a bicycle to summer camp, or go down to California in the winter to run a winter camp, the second I could, like I was gone. Like I think it was grade 11. I missed a solid half of my year because I just went to California. I was riding bikes, and of course I repeated that a little bit to get out of high school because I kept missing giant chunks. But super attractive place, and it was ripe for that insane growth. Skateboarding became a real thing very, very short,
very quickly,
on the heels of all the work that you guys did with Thrasher, with everything that was happening. It just blew up, and it happened to do it at the exact same time that there was now a winter alternative, which was snowboarding, which made everything just this whole bigger thing, which was crazy. And I bet you if we dug back deep enough, surf is, surfing has always been cyclical, and it's the oldest of all the board sports. It's been around forever. But I bet you in that period of like 86 to 90, surfing probably went all time, is my guess, because this board sports became crazy.
It did, for sure. Yeah.
It was amazing. I didn't know your hockey background. Do you still strap the skates on once in a while? And
It's been a long time now, but it kind of came and went. I played. It's funny. You'll like this. So, remember when the whole rollerblade thing was playing, or the craze was happening? Well, the only reason, or I should say, a couple good friends got into it, and they were playing hockey, and they invited me. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So they formed a team, and I did that just for fun, right? And did that for maybe, I don't know, a couple years, and then they went to ice, and then they started like a club program, and they did that, and I joined that for a little bit, but that was in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and I haven't really touched it since. But they were even going to start a pro rollerblade hockey thing, and they had a tryout in San Jose, and I hadn't played for a year.
amazing.
This was like around 95, I think, or 94. And I said, what the hell? I went out there and tried out. And I wasn't as fit as I was prior. And they asked me back, but I never went back. I just didn't, and then nothing ever came from it anyway. So it was a good choice. I focused on the business, and the business was starting to take off then.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, if you want to get out and go and play some stick and puck, let me know. Our one of my agency's biggest clients is CCM, so we've got a pretty good
Oh,
pipe.
cool.
If you need new set of blades,
Super tax.
yeah,
Fan my whole life.
yeah.
Once they introduced Super Tax, just to give you an idea, I was playing when Super Tax came out. I had already been playing for years, and then they came out with the Super Tac, and that was the boot for choice forever.
Yeah, the product they make is unbelievable, and to be honest, the CCM company, the people are like they're one of our favorite, if not our favorite, group of people to deal with. They're just the nicest, most earnest, honest people trying to support this. Hockey is a small sport in the grand scheme of things. It's small. Their
Yeah.
business is large because they're the world leader,
Right.
but it's a ton of effort, and it's just a giant company full of really good people. So yeah, we love them. But anyways, we'll talk hockey another time. So
Yeah.
you go through. There's this a point where you are skateboarding, but you have this interest back in mountain bike. I don't know how that worked. Like, how did you get? How did that turn happen?
So kind of going back to Michigan when I was, God, I met here. So BMX, before it was even called BMX, I was doing it. I was holding races we'd lay out a course at the end of our neighborhood in Michigan, and I'd charge each of the kids a dime to race. And this was 70 probably. I was what, 8 years old, 70, 71 roughly. And a couple of years later, I'm in school, and they sent out this like a school paper that crossed the national school paper, like just to update what's going on, and it says new sport coined BMX, and I'm looking at it, reading about it, and I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, but so two wheels, anything with wheels has kind of been my passion, and so I hadn't ridden, I was skating, and then a friend introduced me to mountain bike, and I think it was '86. So in '86, I bought a mountain bike and started riding, and then as the skating was kind of winding down, I started getting more into mountain biking, especially around '89, and started doing a couple of local races and whatnot, and then got pretty heavy into it, and still skating and working at Santa Cruz, but I even got Novak into mountain biking. He really enjoyed it. I got him to even race at Sea Otter in the Industry Cup a couple of times, but yeah, it just it kind of became my next thing. And that, snowboarding, like you said earlier, that was a tie-in too. I was snowboarding since 77, 78.
Mm.
And God, I got this dumb bug. Tom Sims was doing the plastic board with you put your skateboard on top of the bungee, right? And then when I moved out here, oddly enough, the 2 weeks probably after I got out here to California, I went up with Caballero and stayed at Mike Chantry's house, and Tom Sims was there,
Hmm.
Terry Kidwell, and all of us. It was that was one of the biggest winters up until last winter. I think last winter barely just eclipsed that 82, 83 winter. I
Mm.
mean, the snow was insane that year. We were the first guys. So we went snowboarding, right? And at that time, Tom had a bunch of boards, so we tried those boards, but there was no metal edges. It was the fins on the back.
Yeah.
So we went to Sugar Bowl, which is up in Tahoe, and we were the first guys to ever snowboard there. And they didn't open it up for a while, but I guess when they finally did, a couple of guys went off piste and they closed it down for years, and then it didn't actually come back in until I think late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, because you know how the whole skier, snowboarder hatred thing went on for a long time. So,
Yeah, I think I forget what there is, but there's something up in Utah that's still
oh, Snowbird.
snowbird.
It, I'm
Shout
I'm
out to
pretty sure it's
snowbirds
Snowbird.
keeping it,
It,
keeping it
they don't allow it. Yeah,
free. It's just
right.
crazy. Sure.
Yeah,
Okay. Sure. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a wild thing, but I get it. At the time, it really seemed like an odd thing, and uh, I get why the ski world was tentative about it. Most people who were smart figured it out real quick and just went
yeah.
up their hills. It didn't last very long in Canada that was an issue, and they just made it less restrictive and stupid. Really,
Right.
so that was good.
Yeah, people hate change. That's it's probably one of the worst traits of the human character is they don't like change. They get complacent and they comfortable and they don't want to change.
Yeah, it's everything in life. That's why no one.
Yeah,
That's why
sure.
people don't leave their house anymore. They just sit there and uh, numb their brain with video games and TV and porn and all the rest of the stuff, and they're just living in
Hmm.
these 2D worlds and missing a whole
Right.
bunch of reality. Where you and you're a tiny bit older than me, but not a lot. I always chuckle because I'm in that what I call the helmet generation. Every single thing I did for fun, I should wear a helmet. I didn't, obviously, up to more times,
Right.
but literally every single thing that I was even remotely interested in, with exception to basketball because I loved basketball. I should, it was all dangerous and stupid, all of it. Like there was
Oh
nothing.
yeah.
Like there's the original snowboards were terrifying. You had literally next to no control. They were these terrible things. The original first mountain bikes, which I assume is one of the reasons you decided to start building mountain bikes. And I was a pro bike racer in this early era of
Right.
mountain biking. They were so bad. They were
Yeah.
so bad. All of them would consistently break nonstop. A bike not breaking was a rare occurrence. To get through a bike race and be like, bike's completely intact. It's like that.
Yeah. Something always breaks. Yeah.
It
Exactly.
never happened. And it could be tragic. Like I remember back in the day, there was some local bike builders building like custom bar stem combos and that kind of stuff, just sort of dabbling with that. And I was just like, I would never use it because if a stem breaks, you're done. Like that's it. And you're like, there's
Yeah.
all sorts of people just like, oh yeah, let Mike build your stem for you. He'll build them for free. It's like, yeah, just the amount my teeth cost to replace it when I smash them out because that dude's welded back is insane. But that was
Yeah.
kind of the like as kind of part of the game when the sport is so young. So speaking of that, what was the decision making to start a bike company? How did you go and lever your partner to you use a recognizable brand, which was a brilliant move. How did that history play out?
So, like I said, I got Rich involved, Novak, who's the owner of Santa Cruz Skateboards, in riding. And this is probably around 91. At that time, what was it, 92? Yeah, 92. Because I was racing for Ross Schaefer Salsa through another distributor of his locally program. And Rich just one day said, "What do you think about doing, Santa Cruz bikes?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And at that time, I was riding a real close friend of mine, Mike Marquez, who actually co-founded Santa Cruz with me, was tight with Paul Turner from RockShox,
Mm-hmm.
and because he worked for Paul when Paul was doing the motocross pipes back in the day, and so he would send us the RockShox forks to try out and ride, because that's when this is right before RockShox just went nuts. And Paul was he's actually so anyways and so I did the research, and I figured him and Paul or Keith Bontrager and Paul Turner did the Kestrel Nitro,
Mm-hmm.
first full suspension bike at the 80, God, what year was that? 88 ish at Interbike.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it because we were at the show for skateboards. We'd go to the the Interbike shows, and for Santa Cruz Skateboards would have a booth, and I'd work I used to run the shows for Santa Cruz, and I remember those guys introducing that bike. Anyway, so it seemed like front suspension was coming, and it just was a matter of time. Everyone was going to hop on full suspension because if you got something that's compliant and takes the edge off, you're going to go faster. And it was a cool thing in that time because there were so many different ideas and designs for suspension systems.
Mm-hmm.
So the marketplace was kind of a guinea pig error, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, it was crazy.
The consumer was the guinea pig.
Consumer was literally the consumer was from the wispiest, like all that amp designed stuff.
Right.
Their fork, which was really cool, was a death
Yeah.
trap. Their suspension, I would ride it for 5 minutes and it would just be leaking oil everywhere, or I would bend the triangles up, the rear triangle, like a pretzel. But yeah, everything was like, you would have, San Andreas with their crazy monocoque.
Mm-hmm.
The original, like, I remember being so intrigued. I owned a small retail store when I was quite young, with some friends of mine, Moose Mountain Cycle and Sports, and we were a Fisher dealer. And I remember Fisher launched, I don't remember what Gary called it, but his very first suspension bike came in. It was super complex, weird 4-bar-y thing. It was really cool. And I remember just looking at it and being a local Canadian pro and just being like, wow, this is the thing. And I looked at that one and I'm like, I was afraid to ride it because it just looked like I would break it in about 2 seconds. It looked really complex and fragile, all these different things. But I remember,
I think that was Mert Lawwell's design, right?
It was Mertz. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
And I actually, it's my like crown jewel of accomplishment is I bumped into Mert at Interbike. I think it was Interbike. And it was during when we were doing Outland stuff. And I bumped into him and I saw his tag and I obviously knew who it was, but I double checked. I'm like, oh, that's Mert. I'm like, Mert, I'm a huge fan. Like, I'm a fan. Thank you for all the cool stuff you've done through your life. Like, it's amazing. And he's like, where are you from, kid? And I'm like, I do this thing out. Like, I know that bike. He goes, I was just overlooking it. He goes, you guys are going the exact right way. And I was like, really? And he was like, yep, gotta go. And I had 1,000 questions. I could have like monopolized his entire day, but he just jetted on me. But it was one of the coolest interactions that I ever had. And for anyone who doesn't know, Mert is very famous in the motorbike world. And he's one of the stars in a very iconic motorcycle movie called On Any Sunday. Super generous, like to me outwardly. I don't know him well. It's the only interaction I've ever had with the guy, but he took the time to talk to me. It was really nice. So that's
he's a good guy. I know his son Joe really well because Joe works at Shimano, and we've had and Joe would come down here and race the cyclocross series in the early '90s too. And so he lived down here for a while, so we were pretty close for a while. And he called me up. It's funny. It was probably 3 years ago now. He's coming up, and I'm like, yeah. Well, that day I'm going to be up at our local track up a couple hours from here that I drive my race car on. And I go, yeah, if you want to come up, I'll give you a ride because I put a passenger seat in it. Can't do it anymore, but the model year I have, you can. So, and he's like, oh, that'd be awesome. So the next day he calls me. He's like, hey, I told my dad that, what I'm doing tomorrow with you, and he wants to come. And I'm like, yeah, sure, bring him along. Okay, at this time, Mert's probably 83 or 84 now. He was around 81. And I go, well, Joe, it'd be great to bring him, yeah, but if he wants to ride in the car, is he physically going to be okay to do that? At 81 years old, the car pulls 3.5 Gs in corners. And so anyways, we get up there and Mert comes, we get him in the car, and that took a while. We got him in there because it's super cramped, right? I mean, you're right on top of each other almost. And so we get going around, and I go, Mert, just give me the thumbs up or thumbs down if you want to keep going or not. Come around after the first lap, he's all, oh yeah, let's go. He's like every lap, and okay, and I'm like, still good. So I give it a little more and push it a little bit more, and he kept giving me a thumbs up. But the guy is super cool guy. He loved it. The guy, that innate thrill for speed. I think we all have that desire, that high you get. He's 81 and he still has it. It's impressive as hell.
I feel that never goes away. Especially, it's not ever going away in someone who's had that life.
Yeah,
it's just it's the purest feeling. Like it's so pure.
Totally. And that's a prime example, I think, no matter what age. And physically, I mean, he couldn't walk great at that time. He was definitely slow, and age is catching up. But I mean, it was like a little kid again. It was awesome to see.
Yeah, it's I love seeing that. And if that ever disappears in me, that's when I've given up. But that thrill, that's the not.
Same.
Yeah, that's it. It's like that's the thrill. Like I was a good bike rider, but I never really properly learned how to dirt jump. Never. And so I don't know. 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually go and learn how to actually hit proper wood ramps and like really do this as a correct thing. And it was like, it is one, I smashed myself up a few times. However, it's the greatest feeling ever. Like it literally is the greatest feeling. Same, like you'd be the same way. I get on a bike and I would assume that if in the general scope of people that ride bikes, I hold master level skills. I'm
sure
on a bike, and I never get tired of it. I learn something every single time I get on my bike. There's a small learning moment every time. There's never a point where it's just like status quo-y kind of thing. You learn something about how your sidewalls are bending or how to lever something a little bit different and, pick up an extra second out of a corner, and you're just like, and it's the most thrilling thing ever. And it's great. I don't love hitting the ground anymore. In fact, I did went out. I was through a whole series of injuries and surgeries over the past year, elbows, knees, all sorts of stuff, just from smashing them and mountain biking and all that kind of stuff. Went out and did a fat bike winter ride on this like local, like it could be like an intermediate jump trail. You do this amazing climb up and then you come down. It's fully packed. It's ice. It's great on studs, but you constantly over jump on this trail. It's like built for kids. And so
Right.
I over jumped, went into the trees, hit the tree, didn't even fall, cracked a whole series of ribs with my own elbow, like just caught it on the
Yeah.
inside, cracked some ribs. I'm like, okay, recovered from that, went out 3 weeks later, went off the booter at the bottom of that same trail, got a little bent out, landed a little bit sideways and cracked some ribs up top and like 2 rides back to back rib injuries. I'm like, oh, I'm such an adult idiot. Like, it's just like, oh, okay. But, it's going to happen. It doesn't happen that often, thank God. Back-to-back rib
Right.
are not ideal. However, it's not, obviously everyone looks at me and goes, maybe you should stop that. And I look at them, I go, well, I can stop being your friend. That's easier. Or you can just never say that to me again. So you get the option.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Because I actually did that. What's today? Monday. I did it on Saturday. I went for a ride and was flying down this one section that I rode the day before, and you go over this step down jump, and it's around a corner, and I turned the corner and I'm moving, probably going like 25, and all of a sudden a tree had fallen across the trail.
Of course.
And I saw it and was like, I brake. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to stop in time. So I just threw the bike and landed on, did the same thing you just said. I put my elbow into my ribs. I cracked a rib for sure. It's sore as shit.
Yeah.
But you're always, my whole thing is you ride at 80% now at the age we're at now, because
Thank you.
the 80%, it took me 10 years to learn that and kind of, I say, dial back on the throttle, but it avoids going to the hospital.
Yeah. I say it all the time to people that I'm riding with, and there's not many people that are a bunch faster than me. I'm still like on downhill in my area. I'm still like one of the faster guys for sure. And we'll do something. I'm like, I'll be at the top. I'm like, I'm going to go 80%, guys. Just you do whatever you do. I'll do me. And I eventually usually catch them or pass them or start and drop them. I got a couple guys that I ride with that are really quick though. And those guys just take off now, which is great. But at 80%, I can go to a movie that night with my wife. I'm still good. Like, I have all the fun.
Exactly.
If I ride at 60, I'm not in the game. I don't get into the flow. I don't get what I need to out of that action. I need to be like higher than 60, but lower than 90. It's like this pocket. And the second I go into the even remotely 100, 110 is such a crapshoot whether I'm going to make it out of that. And you're going so fast. Like, it's so fast.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The bikes work so well. You're carrying so much more speed than you used to. I mean, the corner speed now is, wow. And it's changed a lot too. You got a lot of guys building berms everywhere now, so that adds to the corner speed.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of like super janky off camber, rooty, rocky corners. Berms is good fun, but I'm like, I live in the like non-machine built trail world is where I really enjoy stuff. Machine built stuff's great and I love it, but give me a really janky, rooty, terrible climb with a really janky, terrible, rooty downhill that most people, they look at and they're like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, no, that's literally
the challenge.
That's where all the good stuff is, guys, right there. Like, you want to learn how to be good, do that. And it's quite an interesting break.
Does your brand need some help in the trade marketing department? Manage your sales tools with Regulator's easy-to-use features. Whether it's fixtures or displays, POP, custom art or promo products, you can submit single or bulk orders for all your locations within minutes, using a simple, streamlined process. Deliver content, manage your budget and view the market, all from the palm of your hand. Move up to 10 times faster than your competitors and capture all the opportunities that put your brand on top. Visit brandregulator.com for more information.
So you guys are building bikes, and you guys get into this. You guys, through this period, just for people who don't know, myself, James Klassen, and a couple knuckleheads that I didn't get along with, stood up a company called Outland. Outland held our technology that James and I had crafted called VPP. That had folded. Well, not quite folded, but the company was like, I had left because of not because of James, but because of the person running the company. And I had taken a job for Oakley, or with Oakley at that time, which was one of the greatest experiences of my life working for that brand. Out of the blue, I get a call from you. Really randomly, my phone rings, and I'm like, it's a really strange number. Answer it, and you're like, sort of digging around who, if they owe me anything for the patent, and this, that, and the next thing. And I had sort of exited it by that point. How did you, I know the story reasonably well, but how did you stumble across the idea of resurrecting VPP?
Okay, so it was around 99. So what we did with Santa Cruz was built off, obviously, a single pivot. We introduced it with the Tasman, then the Heckler, and Bullet and Super 8, so on. But around 99, a lot of other guys were kind of glomming on and figured out what we were doing was, at that time, it was simple, but it worked really well. And I'm never want to sleep, and I always want to be on to the next thing to improve the ride and make it as best as possible. And so I started looking around, and at that time, we were, or I should say, Paul Turner again came back into the picture, and he started Maverick, and he was running, or he was working on prototypes. He hadn't even started Maverick yet, and so he sent me one of the bikes, started riding it around. It was pretty damn good as far as efficiency and pedaling and bump absorption, etc. But we were trying to negotiate and to put it into the Santa Cruz line. And at that same time, our engineer, Neil Saki, he later went on to start Zero Motorcycles. And, we were talking one day, and Neil, I go, what's in your opinion, what's the best suspension design you've seen to this day? And he thought, and he's like, yeah, the VPP is pretty damn good. So to the phone call you got from me, that took that took a little while to get your contact, and then from there to find out where God, what's the guy's name? I'm going blank. Help me out that own Outland.
Well, there's James, my partner in it, but there's Terry.
No, not James. Terry, thank you.
And
so
that's the name that I never utter. It's like Voldemort.
Sorry, but
and I'm definitely not going to say it 3 times, because if he shows up in my world accidentally like Beetlejuice, I'll lose my mind. But yeah, that guy, he was a hard pill to swallow, that fella.
Yeah, no worries. So anyways, it took me a while to get in touch with him, and finally did. And then at that point, everybody I talked to in the industry wanted nothing to ever do with this guy again.
Shocking.
Yeah, you're not shocked. So anyways, that's why it was so hard to get a hold of him, basically. Finally did, and at that point we were just wanting to buy the patents, and he what if he wouldn't sell the patents unless he sold, like, he had a bunch of tubing and a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, right? So we're like, yeah, okay. So anyways, we negotiated a deal. At that point, that seemed much easier to scale, the VPP, than the Maverick Monolink, which it came to be. When we were when you guys introduced it in '95 at Interbike, I remember we were both like, holy shit. And we were blown away that, when you're out of the thing's not all the force going into it isn't pumping the shock crazy, right? And it was super efficient, blah, blah, blah. So anyway,
not bad for two kids out of Calgary to figure that.
yeah, it was very ahead of its time, so to speak. And so anyways, yeah, so we brought in Steber, and it was it was a great relationship for a number of years. And the idea was, because he had already established a solid footprint in racing, and what he brought to it in the industry, and it'd be great to have somebody along those lines for a marketing partner. And two are better than one kind of mentality, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And he was like, almost Intense was more counterculture. It's the farthest thing away from Specialized or Trek. Like, it's like actually cool stuff. Like, really, really, your two brands fit together so good because you're both strangely mavericks in like, you're both approaching it from completely different. Spaces.
So he went straight into the racing aspect from the get-go, and we were more about building the business and making it obviously profitable and having the money to go out and spend on racing eventually, but not up front. I mean, I always wanted to from the get-go, but we didn't have the money to do that. And it was a different approach than what Jeff had done, but I think in the end ours worked out really well. And eventually, I should say, we were able to. We sponsored small guys, but the Luna Chicks team was the first major team we sponsored, and then we did that for 2 years, and then at that point we had sponsored a team with Darren Stockton, who was doing Intense Tire Systems, and we were the frame sponsor. And then I talked with him, and I'm like, because we got pretty close, and I'm like, I want to do my own team. And he came on board, and for the first year and a half or so, and then I got to the point where, okay, to do this right, we had Rennie. He was in Vorez, but I wanted a big name. Rennie and Vorez were big, but Petey was. I had met Petey years back, and we hit it off pretty well. And so I went to World Cup or World Champs in I think Livigno in 2005, and went back home with him from there. Drove back with him, and just we eventually worked out a deal. He came on the syndicate, and that was my dream, was to build out the ultimate race team, and that was the Santa Cruz Syndicate.
Well, and you guys did. VPP holds the honor, I think, of most World Cup, World Championship wins of any any suspension platform that has ever existed. In fact, I think it beats all the other ones combined, between you and Jeff's racing teams, effectively at that time. And then you got Steve Pete and you got Greg. And then, like, it literally, the syndicate was just full of murderers that were on the best platform that could possibly exist, with the best support that could possibly exist, with a company that actually gave a shit to give the riders bikes that are fast as hell. And it's funny because you say it like that, and you're like, of course you would be the guy who would win the most. But winning, like, it's a lot of wins. Like, it's an inordinate.
Yeah, we were very fortunate, but I think really, when you do anything, you want to do it to the best of your ability, so you get the best people.
Yeah, I think, again, that's an interesting thing. That's how I think, and that's where VPP came from originally. That's where my businesses flourish and all that stuff. That's what you think, and that's how you built an amazing, beautiful company and given back so much to the sport that was your second choice in sports. Like you had all of these successes all the way through. Not everyone thinks that way. Most people suck. Lots and lots of people. Like, and again, not to be down on society, but the world, you're the anomaly, not the other way around. So, you being,
Thanks.
you being like, cavalier about just your general way of like, well, I'm going to do it, which means I'm going to do it the best way I can. Well, you think that way. And, to go to an extreme, there was a Jeff Bezos interview I was listening to the other day where he was like, yeah, I quit being the CEO at Amazon because I want to go to space, and I can't be the CEO of that company and want to go to space. It doesn't work, because whatever I do, I have to do 100%, which means I do both. But that's rare. Most people try to divide their time. In fact, I even do that to my detriment in a lot of situations. But to just sit down and actually be like, we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And building your company, and cautionary tale to anybody out there who wants to build a bike racing or bicycle company. Racing is the secondary thing. Company first, always. Sales, build the company, get it right, and then support.
The most important thing always is the product and the people. If you don't have the right people and the right product and and timing, obviously timing is everything, because and like everybody else, I think that as an entrepreneur or whatnot, you learn from your failures, and I've failed in many other adventures, but you keep going, and hopefully you hit it off. And the Santa Cruz for me was the one big one that everything came into play, and it worked out really well. But you have to keep going and working hard to you can't give up, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you can't give up. And like, dude, I'm assuming like if there was visible piles of successes and failures behind me, the failures would be a giant mountain and the successes a hill. And that's the reality of all these things. And
totally.
When you get something and it's hot and you're smart enough to know that you're like, oh, we're actually onto something here. Here's a thing. There's luck. Luck does exist. It's a thing. I put that down to the timing. Market conditions were right. The timing was right. There are certain things where it's out of your control and you're blindly doing things. And that's part of it. But in most instances, it's not. It's super hard work. It's drive. It's like the iterations you guys have done to make VPP better and better and better and better and better and better and better. The bike I ride today, the new version of the High Tower, is like, it's a spaceship. It's not even close. Like, I couldn't have possibly even imagined how tuned and how good a bike could get 10, 12, 13, 15, 20 years ago. Not even close. Like, we were talking about this before. Like, they're spaceships. They're completely different. The bikes never break, ever.
It still breaks, but not like it used to.
Yeah, not quite the same. Like, honestly, I don't think I rode 3 seasons. So I get a new frame every 3 years, and whatever parts are still good, I just keep moving them over. I don't like just sort of wasting stuff. In fact, the bike I have right now is the first all new bike I've had in probably 6 years, but I rode the last version of SRAM's very first shot at wireless stuff, and it was flawless. I had the first kit that came into Canada. I put it on my bike. I didn't wreck a derailleur. It's mashed. It looks like it shouldn't work. It works flawlessly. It's still hanging on my old High Tower. It's perfect. Like, how the hell can you get, like, I used to not be able, I'd go through 5 derailleurs in the summer easily, like, without even batting an eye, like hangers and derailleurs, and like, it's nonstop. Chains don't break really that much or not. Like, the stuff is so solid. Like, it's a completely different game. It's completely different. If you go and teleport yourself from 1990 to now, you would never imagine that these things are what they are. Like, they're so much better. And it makes sense. They're $18,000 Canadian to buy a really nice bike now, but it's a really nice thing. So, it is what it is.
From brand development to simple market executions, 54 Blue helps brands of all sizes grow with sustainability in mind. Their full stack range of services include print, fabrication, design, web, interactive, content marketing, brand consulting, creative strategy, and more. Join some of the world's largest brands and lean on 54 Blue for your next go-to-market. Visit 54blue.com for more information.
Okay, since we're talking about racing, let's talk about racing. Greg just left, went over to Norco. Gwen, who was someone that I know from Oakley, brought him into Norco. Not only did I find this absolutely shocking, I was saddened actually by it. I am very much a Santa Cruz Syndicate and Santa Cruz Bicycle Company supporter. Were you saddened by Greg leaving?
Yeah, in the sense that, we all thought, even Greg, that he was going to retire with Santa Cruz. So that, in that sense, that was a bummer to say the least. But given what transpired and what he went through last year, I totally understand why. And I've been very supportive of him, and because I want to see what's best for him.
It sounds
Because
like
he's a close friend, right? And I want to see him succeed and be supported as best as he should be, considering what he's accomplished over the years. And that wasn't happening, so it was time to. And it just, things fell into place too. It very quickly fell into place. And Gwen, she's a a go-getter, to say the least.
say the least. Yeah.
So he's super pumped for this coming year, and I won't be surprised if he wins a race.
I won't be surprised when he'll win a race just to put a stamp on this in his style. And I think that's amazing. And he's definitely still fast as hell. No doubt. It's funny. It's like I've listened and read and ingested basically everything on around that. And you can see that he's super upset about it. He's not happy. Like he's happy that he's got a good landing spot and he's happy that he's going to be able to continue. But you could see that there's some unsaid things that are lurking in the background, but he's just a good dude who doesn't want to run roughshod over the company that supported him for a long time. I'm sure over a long enough time span, the little stories will come out. It sounds like his support was, and there was just incidences and things were a little lackluster last year as far as, making sure that he had what he needed literally as the GOAT. Like if you brought Gretzky his skates while everyone else is warming up and said, "Get going, Wayne," he'd look at you like you were a maniac. Like it just, these things, he wasn't getting treated where he should. That being said, I'm looking at this from third-hand reports and just trying to cobble together what's going on. It didn't sound great, but there's always two sides to these stories. And, the syndicate's got these young bucks that need to be supported and need to happen, but it just seemed like an off-putting thing. Doesn't change my opinion. I'm super psyched to see what goes on this season, and even more invested to see Greg show up on a different bike and see what he can do. Like that guy could drive a shopping cart down the mountain and get in the top 10. So no offense, Norco, and I'm sure the bikes will be great. I know the Norco people. I'm in the bike industry. You can see our Da Vinci crap. They're one of our clients, and we do stuff for all sorts of bike people through my marketing company. No offense, Norco, but like Greg will win a race, or he'll podium for sure, and he could do it literally on one of your kids' bikes because he's just that good. So I'm excited to see what he can do, and I know Norco's got a really good bike. I've ridden them, and they work well. All suspension bikes nowadays work.
They work well.
They all work well. They all, like, people come and they ask me all the time, what bike should I get? What should I do? What should I do? It all is basically at this point. Of course, I'm just emotionally invested in Santa Cruz. I started something, it's there, it still goes. Of course, I'm not going to ride anything different. My fat bike's a Trek, but Santa Cruz doesn't make snow bikes. So what are you going to do? But to me, it all comes down to actual rider fit on the bike. That's the more important thing. All the bikes work pretty good now. Santa Cruz, in my humble opinion, still like for all the micro trade-offs you have to do to get a suspension system to work correctly, Santa Cruz has balanced them, in my opinion, still just about the best. The bikes, the reason VPP worked is my how in tune I am with the bike and the ground is really, really accurate. And that's how I knew exactly what we needed from a rider's perspective to get VPP as a concept off the ground. It has to do these exact things. I don't think I've ever told you this. We built the first prototype. It was minus bajillion. We were somewhere in northern Alberta where James was working on this prototype. We took an old Rocky Mountain frame of mine, cut it up into pieces, built a rear end, welded everything together. He built it all up and he goes, okay, it's time to ride this thing. And I'm like, okay. And it was minus, like I said, 30. It was pitch black outside. I got on it, rode it 30 feet. I bent the triangle, just pedaling because it wasn't built right. Came back, dragging it. It's all twisted up. And he looked at me, he goes, what'd you do? I was just riding. And he's like, oh, and he's a very good Christian boy. He's like, dang. And I go, what are you upset about? And he goes, wow, we didn't get to test it. And I don't know if it works. I go, oh no, dude, it works. Works perfect. It does exactly what it should. It worked so perfect. And he just looked at me. I go, build the next one. Let's go. And but I could feel it immediately that I was like, it was game changing. It was like for the first time, exactly what a rider should feel on a bike. And I remember I'd raced for, this part's known a tiny bit. I was racing for GT as a pro up in Canada for a couple of years, kept breaking their bikes, kept just sending them back. And they'd send me LTSs or RTSs and I'd just break them and break them and break them. Sent them. I podiumed at our nationals here, didn't retire because that would mean I had like a real career, quit bike racing. Sent him back the thing, said, hey, I've got a bunch of ideas for suspension designs and I know why your bikes keep breaking. I've figured it out. In fact, I figured it out with James because I went to him one day and I was like, hey, the bike keeps breaking. This is what my intuition's telling me. And he did some math on it and he figures, yeah, you're really close. This is why it's breaking. So I wrote him this letter and I got back a basically fuck off kid kind of reply from them, which I found really surprising, but I was just like I'm with a low level North American pro. I was good. Going to the US and win stuff, but like they didn't care. Like they had, other things. And so, which I found really surprising, but I love to bring that up to GT every single time anybody from that company. I'm like, it's a really interesting little side story for you guys. And they're just like, oh. But hubris is a bitch, and it probably just landed on some dude's desk who was having a bad day and was just like, I don't deal with this kid and we're not going to give him like he's quit, and they just shut it down. But anyways, the ride feel of Santa Cruz is insane still. In fact, it's only gotten better and better and better and better and better to like this ridiculous level. So thank you for making bikes the funnest thing on the planet because they're so good now. It's crazy.
It's all about little refinements,
that small iteration on everything that you guys do. And I always chuckle because there's a bajillion couch engineers that review these things on YouTube and start drawing up the kinematics and this and that. And they're like, well, once you get past 50% of the travel, the suspension starts falling apart a little bit and the numbers start going on. It's like, who's 50% deep into their travel and sitting in the saddle climbing? Nobody. You want the answer, sir. 0.0. Like, you want to control anti-rise and anti-squat, the two really big wild forces that you kind of need to manage on a bike. And then if they start fading out, on these edge cases. Like if you're blowing through 50% of your travel while you're climbing, you are not climbing correctly. You're doing something really, really odd and wrong. And or you're out of the seat, and it doesn't matter if it's not perfect at that point because you're either mashing up something crazy or whatever. Doesn't make sense. But you guys have done you and your past team did a magnificent job.
Thank you. But to your point, over time, that's just tweaking it and little refinements and making it better and better and better. But the other point you made is most people, like the armchair engineers, basically, I call them, on, forum threads and whatnot, they say all this shit. And there are very few people that can ride a bike and give you the correct feedback of what's actually going on, what's right with the bike, what's wrong with the bike. Very few. I mean, even the top pros, there's only a handful of all the top pros that race. There's a handful that can tell you what they're truly feeling, because we do tests and you get feedback and, yeah, whatever. And then you just set it to what you think it should be, and then the guy's, oh, that's way better, right? But anyways, like Greg is one of those guys.
Greg's a guy who can do that. It goes back into the automotive industry, and Mert would know this really well. It's generally not the fastest guy. Greg is an anomaly. I was not the fastest.
Well, Julio was the same way. Julio was the same way.
Yeah, and there's a few people that would have it, but it's rare to have an athlete that can do it. I recognized it in myself, which, to be honest, was one of the things. Like I'm fairly sure I can make a better one of these things. Like,
right,
it can't be worse. That's the first thing. And I was like, all these are they're not complicated enough. No one's really thought about the real problem. There's a ton of different forces going on here. So, let's dive into this from more of a Newtonian physics level and look at this and look at all the levers
exactly,
and figure it out.
Break it down. Yeah.
I got an interesting question that someone asks me all the time, and I've got a definitive answer. In your opinion, what is, and I'm going to give you mine afterwards, what's since mountain bikes came out, was the number one innovation to date? And I've got an odd answer. I'd love to see what yours is.
Number one innovation.
Yeah, game-changing innovation.
Well, other than full suspension?
Yeah, because I don't think that's it.
Adjustable the seat post, hands down.
That's a good one. Mine is interesting. Mine is one by drivetrain is epic. Getting rid of that front derailleur opens up.
I agree, but that doesn't change the ride quality as much as the seat dropper, because the seat dropper allows you to lower your CG and it makes riding safer.
I give you that you're for sure.
And more controllable. They're just safer in general, but more, you can get over the bike and move the bike underneath you much easier.
You could always lower your seat. You could never just always get rid of a front derailleur.
Not on the fly.
Not on the fly. I give you that. It's more convenient. It's more practical.
You don't have time. What, you're going to stop at the top of every before the steep descent and lower your foot?
I was a bike racer in the 80s. Of course I would do that. If it was a huge downhill, of course.
Well,
of course.
Yeah, but if it's a rolly course is my point.
Of course. Well, I'd just have my seat up like a giant mast. I'm 6'4".
Yeah, exactly. That's what we all did back then. You had to, right?
Yeah. But I debate that one by has opened up suspension so that everyone can do it really well. It's gotten rid of.
It's definitely helped immensely there. I agree 100%. Yeah.
It is, it has given everything, including e-bikes, an easier ride.
Especially e-bikes.
Yeah, through the engineering.
Because the motor.
Yeah, like it's game
space constraints. Right.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thing to get rid of, to remove components and take the trade-off of a more limited gear ratio set, which I still have bike racers come to me and they're just like, I have to have a front chainring because I need more steps in between so that I can maximize my power and stuff. And I think for a really high
Really?
performing yeah, I've heard it still to this day. I laugh every time I do. I'm like, dude, I don't like, maybe, you know, some of these people are much faster than me. I'm like, okay, sure. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to,
I'm not going to take anything away from him, but I think you and I, especially at the stage of life we're in now, for me, it's, you know, fuck racing. I want to go out and have a great time, as you do, I'm sure.
yep.
And it's not about getting up to the top of the hill first. It's just about enjoying the whole ride.
Yeah, I still have a little bit of an issue wanting to get to the top of the hill first, which I never but I'm definitely a climbing fanatic. And
Yeah.
I think I've shuttled once in my life. Everything I do is under pedal power. But I'm a weird dude with that. I want to keep my fitness up and make it through life. And truthfully, I say this to everybody. I go, you should figure a way to enjoy climbing. And for me, the only spot I can get, I'm a busy guy with work and life, lots of
Right.
responsibilities and staff and stuff. The only time I can't meditate in my gym. It doesn't work. The only time I can get in a really good meditative state is if I'm locked into an hour long climb. I'm doing, you know, 700 meters of climbing in a shot. And I can get into this zone where I can hear my heart, my breathing, and everything changes. And it's like,
Right.
it's euphoric. And it's the only time I can't get it on my road bike. I can on my road bike if I'm climbing real stuff, but where I am here, the roads are gridded.
It's too distracting though because you got cars.
Yeah, it doesn't
I,
work.
I get what you're saying. I get it.
Yeah, so I find that
You
really.
focus. Yeah.
So through this journey, and you are no longer at Santa Cruz, you're moving on with your career in life to do many more fun things. You, at one point, and your partners had sold to Pawn, which is a company out of the Netherlands, who
Mm-hmm.
I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think they're one of the largest conglomerate bicycle companies on the planet now with all the different divisions. But this is an automotive
Yeah.
slash company that has worked their way into the cycling world.
Right. They started out in cycling first, to be honest.
Did they?
And the family's business started out in cycling in the late 1800s, and then I think it was in the 20s or 30s they got into automotive, and the grandfather actually designed the VW bus with
Amazing.
Ferry Porsche, and those drawings sit in the museum in Amsterdam of the VW bus with Ferry Porsche. You know, they kind of thing, and then they became the sole distributor for Porsche and something else. But then, you know, then when Porsche became part of the VW group, they got the whole VW group, and yeah, that's a big part of their business. That, some mining, plumbing, or piping
They do
equipment,
it all.
and then they got into the bike thing when they purchased. I think it was Cervelo and then Derby,
Right.
and then that's when they came knocking on my door, and I think originally it was 2012, maybe 13.
We're not here for the high rollers, snooty wine critics, or long haul collectors, but we do think it's about time wine cellars turned into swoon-worthy works of art. Our experienced designers will bring your dream wine cellar to life, fitting any sized space and aesthetic requirements in your home. Our craftsmen carefully hand-build your cellar to give you a wine storage space that really feels like you. Visit themoderncellar.com for more information.
It's interesting because anyone who starts a business envisions being with that business forever, and then reality sets in and we age, and you start saying like, what's my, and the common word is, what's your exit out of this, Rob? And people would say that to you over and over, and then you start envisioning a life outside of this company that you poured everything into, the company that you've suffered, cried over, like epic amounts of sleepless nights over decisions that are so minute in product or distribution or financing and all these,
Yeah.
like, just like it's an endless thing.
And
So
employees.
yeah,
We're
employees.
responsible for the employees and their families, so to speak, in a lot of ways, and that's a huge burden to bear.
Yeah, it's funny because I've got, I don't know, 30, 40 employees through my multiple sort of small companies that I have. And it's the biggest burden I have. It's not what
Mhm.
I'm making or anything. It's like, it's the burden of
The
these.
people.
Yeah, these are moms and fathers, and
Exactly.
these are people that have to live real lives based on the ideas that come out of my head and the business that we can
Hmm.
generate. It makes me act differently. I have to be more responsible because, well, little Timmy needs braces, and if if
Yeah.
Timmy's dad goes out of work because I'm a jackhole and do something crazy, well, that's not so good. So changes everything.
Mhm.
But in the every founder, not every, many founders come up against the decision that you had to make, where it's like, okay, I want this to scale. I want this to be something that lives on past me. I don't believe it's something that I can pass down through my family because for whatever reasons, I'm sure those are all the things that have.
No, that was part of the reason to sell was none of the kids showed really any interest in it. So, okay, so that freed me up. At the same time, selfishly, I wanted to be able to physically do a few things I hadn't been able to do yet to the level I wanted to do it at, and that was drive race cars. So, yeah, but the kids didn't really show any interest, so that took some weight off my shoulders. Wasn't worried about it.
Yeah, that's
And
huge. The Once you go down that pipe, like once you go down that road, I'm
mm,
sure there's a million feelings: love, hate. I don't love what they're doing here, but I see growth. Like, I've never been in that situation. I don't get a ton of chances to talk to someone who's had to make this decision. Do you begrudge doing it? Are you happy with the decision in doing it? Do you miss the chaos of the beautiful prison that you'd built yourself over at Santa Cruz that kept you doing it? Like, I know there's a ton in that question to sort of unpack,
yeah,
but like, my gut tells me, from the viewpoint you have, you agree with some of what Pon would do, but not everything. There'd be no way. You would probably not agree with Greg's situation and what happened there, and that probably would have been dealt with differently under your stewardship. But these things, those are the bitter pills that you have to swallow for the money.
yeah,
But I think there's lots of people out there that, like, is it worth it? Like, my assumption is it would be. There's a point where letting it go is a healthy thing, but it's also a thing that can also be challenging. Do you find that?
yeah. Well, to your point, emotionally, yeah, it's a huge emotional decision toll. Be it is very emotional, but yeah, I think yeah, you miss the camaraderie of the day to day workplace and the people.
Mm,
There's that. That's probably one of the things I miss about it. Um, do I agree with everything they're doing? No, not by any means. I'll be honest with you. The thing with Greg, that never would have happened under my watch.
yeah,
Never.
never.
I don't. I never treat people like that, and I don't expect to be treated that way when I treat people well. And so yeah, I made it. That, anyways. I don't. I think there's a lot of issues right now. I think the bike industry is in a really tough place
Yep.
because they went nuts during COVID. I mean, initially COVID was scary. Like, are we going to be in business tomorrow? Or are we going to, what's going to happen? And then when things flipped and everybody's like, they're confined, but they're allowed to go outside and exercise and do whatever they want. There's only outdoor sport. If you put it this way, during that time, let's call it from 2020 to 2022, those 3 years, if you were in the outdoor sporting industry and you didn't kill it, you're an idiot.
Yep. But do you not find it exceedingly shocking that no one, like, it was real obvious from my vantage point when I saw all these companies, because my marketing company is in the athletic world. So I saw all my clients scaling like crazy. All of them. Production was going like
Right.
wild. And the reps were running in and levering these insane POs 2 years down the pipe. How did all the biggest companies in a reasonably developed industry fuck up seeing the fact that they're going to have too much inventory when this comes to an end, which inevitably it will come to an end? How did that, like, was it just hopeful thinking that this is the new norm? Like, how did they talk themselves into that being logical?
I think it's a few factors. I think one, that mentality was there that it's going to go on for a while. But I've always been kind of played the paranoid side. I was always paranoid of what the competition was doing. And I think being paranoid is a very good trait to have because it keeps you on your toes and makes you work harder to make your product better. But I think another factor would be that the POs that you had to place had to be put way out there. I know the lead time on I think it was the motors with Shimano was like 18 months at one point. But then the other factor is, why aren't you guys watching? You know, everybody was killing it, let's say, but you know, like I said, back to the paranoid part, this can't last forever. And at some point, you know, you gotta like, don't put in these huge POs. Maybe start canceling or tapering back on these POs so you don't get hung out to dry like most of the industry has. I mean, I've heard of some companies have 6 years of inventory.
Well, dude, you would have heard as of 2 weeks ago, Kona had a BOGO on bikes. Buy one, get one free. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. What the hell did you do in your world that you're taking a low margin item and you have so many that you're selling one and giving one away for free? The net loss against that is mind blowing. And I
Yep.
get it. Everyone got greedy. I know what the answer is. It's greed. And it's insane that's like, for the exact same reason I was in sales for a long time at big companies. To expect year over year X percentage of growth for infinity is insane. That
It
doesn't
is.
that doesn't work. It's unrealistic. There are caps. And if you look at any developed business, unless it's sugar water, which has its cap on itself, although it's a massive cap.
Right.
In anything premium, there's real caps with this stuff. Vuitton is not going year over year over year over year over year over year over year. There's no way. None of the companies are. If they say they are, they're full of shit. And they're privately owned.
Mm-hmm.
They're flying about what they're doing with their books. I don't believe it. And to me, it's shocking. Like, hey, bike industry, look at the surf industry. Just look back 8 years and watch an entire giant fashion sector crater. Like, these are things that are obvious. And it wasn't that surf couldn't have been sustainable as a fashion thing. It absolutely is. Those brands still exist, and there's still $1 billion business out
Mm-hmm.
there for these guys. They just got greedy. They had so much of their product moving through stores. They thought they could year over year over year over year 50% growth. Well, it's not sustainable. That's ridiculous. Shame on
It
you.
happens at snowboard too.
Of course. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
In
I
fact,
mean,
it drives me mental. I've got one of my really good friends is one of the owners and CMO at Authentic Brands Groups that buys brands. They just bought the whole Board Riders company, and they get dogged on. Although I see they have a very good fit in the world. This company needs to exist. Brands never die, and someone should come in after the fact and resurrect them. It's the thing. But bike industry, shame on you. Shame. Like, shame. You should have all known better. Like, it's
Yeah, well, it is what it is at this point, and they just need to get through it. And
yeah,
yeah, it's gonna take a couple of years.
it's going to take a few years, and then there's a
Yeah.
glut of used bikes, really nice, not used very much
Oh,
bikes,
the consumer wins out in this one big time.
big
I
time.
mean, the sales or the deals you can get right now on bikes is incredible. So if you need a new bike, now's the time.
It's the time.
Yeah.
Speaking of bikes, what's your favorite all-time bike? All time. Your absolute go-to.
It's changed because I mean, I haven't ridden a rig other than when I go to Retallick to do the heli drops or the shuttle. That's the only time I ride a pedal bike now. I mean, a, a
Normal.
non-electric bike. Yeah, I like the e-bike is really opened to your point. You like to climb. I like to climb, but I like speed and climbing on an e-bike at speed and going up stuff that I never could on a regular bike is it's a whole new game for me.
That's thrilling.
And so I just and you can get the fitness you want on an e-bike, no problem. Just put on an eco, you're gonna suffer.
Yeah, I think
And
actually,
climb for 5,000 feet, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
as a fitness cyclist, I see nothing greater than an e-bike, to be honest, because you can
yeah,
operate, you can do a whole bunch of zone 2 training. Like mountain biking, if anyone you don't know what mountain biking is, the second you leave the parking lot, you're suffering. Every time. There's no
yeah,
very, very rarely parking at the top of something and going down. You are constantly working and going uphill. It is brutal. It's brutal.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
so
But that I see that as a great tool to bring in people that were put off by mountain biking because you had to be fit to do it, right?
it's the greatest thing ever. It's literally
Mm,
the e-bike as again as a fitness cyclist, and proud to be one. I still think the e-bike is one of the greatest things that could ever happen. My 80, what is she now? 81-year-old mother bugged me a couple years ago. She wanted an e-bike, wanted an e-bike, wanted an e-bike. I'm like, Mom,
yeah,
you're never going to use it. She got it. She rides like 5,000 kilometers a year now with my dad. They're
that's
not
awesome.
every single day. They're on their e-bikes and they're out in the fresh air for 4 hours. They're like,
Yeah,
they're infinitely fitter. They're so much happier. They see the world. They're part of life. They're not sitting locked
right.
in this room. It is glorious. It's the greatest, coolest thing that could ever exist because it
Yeah,
just opens up
right.
this.
I see people, well and over their 70s riding around here. Maybe it's on the street, but they're out there doing it, riding. That's what matters.
Yeah, it's in our world where you know I'm a huge community based person, and cyclists are a strange community, but they're my community, and it's
Right.
really well intended, generally good people. There's very
Hmm.
rarely fistfights on a trail. There's no angst. Everyone's happy. Um,
Hmm.
everyone is out. Like, when's the last time you were on a trail and you're worried that you're going to go down and the next person that would come by wouldn't help you? That's a non-issue. That's like
Exactly.
that. I carry a little satellite Garmin thing, not for me, but to help heli out that some poor
Somebody
person.
got hurt or whatever.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
like there's in our
that's
trail.
cool.
Yeah, in our trail system, every day there's a heli. Every day there's
Oh, wow.
a heli evac. It's crazy. It happens so constantly. It's ridiculous. And you're always going to come up against some dude or lady who's wadded it up against something, and they may have just
Hmm.
even like just bit off more than they can chew, and they've just exploded themselves in the middle of nowhere, and they can't get out because they just literally can't see straight anymore. All this stuff happens, but
Wow.
it's such an interesting community because um, it's I don't know, it's different. It's funny you brought up hockey because I was thinking about hockey on the way in, and masculinity and I don't use the word toxic masculinity, but basically that shows up on ice, as you know, instantly. If you're in a men's league hockey game, that if you wanted to get in a fight, you could be in a fight in 30 seconds every single time you walk on the ice. There's this like thing when dudes put on their gear and they got their helmet on, they go out. Yeah, you get put in a penalty box for taking a swing at someone, but you're not getting an assault charge. You're not. Those don't exist on the ice. It just doesn't. And talk to anyone who plays men's league.
Yeah.
It's like, it is not a rare thing to have someone come up, face wash you, give you a little shot in the ribs, and like you scuffle around. If that happened in the bar, you're getting charged instantly.
Yeah.
There's
That's a
no,
good point.
like, this is a thing. And it's, I played a bunch of high end, sort of high level basketball, like men's league sort of stuff. And you would get a tiny bit of roughness, but it doesn't exist. The game doesn't allow it in the same form. So it's hockey.
No,
And
hockey's, yeah.
And I always was like, it was the most off-putting part about playing men's league. I loved hockey and I love hockey, but it's like, I don't really need that. And it's just men behaving really badly. That never happens on mountain bikes. And I cherish that. Like, I'm
with you 100%. The community is, everybody's, for the most part, yeah, you always have some bad eggs and everything, but overall, the mountain bike community is very welcoming and willing to help one another, where you don't see that in many other sports.
No, you don't.
There's always some ego and vibe, oh, that guy's not cool or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's pretty unique in that way. I think mountain biking is pretty cool.
It's the only time I get frustrated and or upset on the trails when I see someone out without a helmet on, outwardly just being like, it's just dangerous, because I'm going to be the one that's going to come across a smashed head and have
right.
helicopter.
I think of it the same way, because it's like, oh God, we're going to have to go scrape up this idiot at some point probably.
Yeah. And it's like, there's a lot of people that I come across and I'll be like, hey, you should probably have a helmet. Yeah. Like, well, it's hanging around your bars there, dude. Just put it on. You'll be fine. Like, you'll be fine. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, like, not to be an asshole.
I've never understood that.
Yeah.
When they put it hanging on the bar, and they're going to put it on when they go downhill. Yeah. It's like the worst accidents happen when you're going slow usually.
Yeah, 4 miles an hour.
Because you're dead weight.
Yep. And you're going to fall over backwards and smash your
head.
Like, when you fall on ice on the road, you're going 0 miles an hour and you can crack your head and die. So if you're climbing your bike 5 miles an hour up something that's doing this, well, what the hell do you think is going to happen when you fall? And I try not to get too deep into it when I'm out there with people, but I get it's my hot button thing. That, and when someone is actively downhilling on a multi-use trail and like just being a bullet and going like coming at you like a maniac. It's like, guys, come on, climbers have the right of way. It's part of the gig. Yeah, downhill's amazing. Trust me, I love it. It's amazing. Come on, there's a few very limited amounts of etiquette that exists on the trail. Let's just get off when you're around horses. Come on.
Right.
Those people have the right to be out here as well. Come on.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay. So your e-bike's your favorite. Mine, I converted, one of the, like the last version, not the single pivot blur, but the VPP blur, into a, Monster Cross with drop bars. And it is by far, without a shadow of a doubt, my favorite bike. I will take it every time I travel. If I'm flying somewhere, it's my number one bike. I can ride the road on it. I've done 100K road rides on it. It's not great, but it's good.
Yeah.
I can do any mountain bike, anything. No problem. I could go to the bike park and jump it. No problem. It's very competent with all. It's the best bike, and that version of VPP on that bike with the limited travel, it is so fast and it's light. It's a beautiful bike. It's my favorite bike, and people think it's ridiculous, and it is, but it's my glorious Frankenstein, and I forever will love it. I think we've covered off so many things. and we've gone really long. It's an hour and 46 minutes. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
You have made a huge difference. Without you and your team going back and buying those patents, that design would have disappeared as just a historic thing that worked, but all the other workarounds would have come sooner or later. They would have all been figured out. All the other designs, Dave Weigel, who I really like, he's a nice guy. Go back and forth with him on Instagram a little bit. He would have figured it out. He's a really smart guy with suspension. There's tons of engineers out there that are.
Weigel, I agree with you on Weigel. Weigel's good. He did figure it out, but he copied VPP in the beginning.
Of course.
And he was doing some work for, I think it was one of our vendors, A-Pro, and we had to put a
cease and desist.
Can't do that. If you want our business, you can't make that anymore because that infringes on our patents. And so that was a interesting one. But yeah, Weigel did a great job as far as marketing himself.
He did.
I commend him there.
100%. I think he's great. And I think like there's just certain people, like I just love that Maverick kind of dude. He's just a guy, kind of odd, not much different than me, just in his shop making cool stuff. And people keep coming to him going, hey, can you make another cool thing? And he's got in the can 1,000 different ways to do very similar stuff that works around all sorts of patterns. He's infinitely clever, really, really clever.
I totally agree.
God love him. And it just makes it more accessible. The more great bikes that exist out there, the better. But anyways, I do want to thank you on one of mine. I'll put it up in a picture. My last version of my high tower that I had custom painted, I took the screaming hand and I put "Thanks, Rob" under. And because that was a classic Santa Cruz Jimbo art. So I will send you I'll put that in here. That I truly thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, thanks for being here. Santa Cruz has been a big part of my life. You've been a big part of my life, and we barely get to talk, but it was amazing to talk with you today. Before we go, do you have anything new coming down the pipe? I know you've been traveling and racing cars and doing all sorts of fun stuff, but anything on the business horizon that we need to start putting a timer on and looking for?
Yeah, we've got 4 patents awaiting. We've got 4 patents that we've put up or put in for. We've gotten 1 approval so far, waiting on the other 3. And looking forward to. It's not. I don't really want to start another company specifically to do this product. I'd rather work with as a licensee or something.
Is this cycling centric?
Yes.
Product? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think it's pretty damn clever. It helps in so many different ways. The more we play with it, I can't really get into it until when we get further along with it and we've got all the patents, then I can share it with you.
I would love to have you back and talk about that. I've got 1,000 other questions just about historic times.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, no problem. Anytime.
Yeah, I'm sure what you got coming down the pipe will be clever as hell. I will not be surprised when it is. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a true honor to get to know you a little bit better. Everybody else, please join back for the next episodes of season 2 of Marketeers Clubhouse, and we'll be seeing y'all soon. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.